So good afternoon everybody. Hello, my name's Katie Raithby-Veall. I work for Human Alchemy as their operations lead and leadership consultant. So it's my pleasure to have the next 45-ish minutes to talk to you about leading like a brand. So this is not me standing in front of the PowerPoint. This is you guys with your decks of cards, using those as a vehicle to have a think about your leadership. So what I often find time and time again is we hear a lot of things about marketing and branding about our businesses and our organisations. I'm going to shove that shut a little bit more, which is great. And people put a lot of effort and energy into those. And now we see a lot more talk about personal branding as well. So how are we using LinkedIn? What are we asking people to, we want them to think about us. And that can be a mixture with our personal lives and character, as well as the fact we like going to the gym and what we do in our work lives and volunteering. But what I'm inviting you to think about today in our time together is your leadership brand, because a lot of people don't think about that. And I would say there are differences to that and how you want to be seen as a leader and regarded at it. And none of us are a finished product. We can choose to adapt and invest in our leadership and how we come across to people, and indeed the teams we lead change regularly and the people within them. So it's an area that I invite us to spend some time together today just looking at. It's a little bit rapid fire, it's going to move quite quickly, but you will have your resources to take away with you. So if there's a particular section that you think, oh, actually, let me think about that a bit more, that's great. And to be honest, to do it justice, I think I would do that. I would go away and really have a look at it, or talk about it with your team members and colleagues as well. So I'm going to check. Hopefully, everybody needs to have a deck of cards, a ring-bound pack of cards in front of them. Has anybody not got one? There was some on the desk. Everybody got one? A writing implement? Unless we're going with blood, tears. We're getting later on in the afternoon. Perfect. Okay. So let's just dive straight into it. The first thing I would like us to have a think about is our leadership identity. And by that, what kind of leader do you... Hello.
Sorry.
No, you are welcome. Grab a seat wherever, guys. Hey.
Hello.
Hey, Ricky. So yeah, grab a seat wherever. We've just done some introductions. We're talking about leading like a brand, and ideally you will find a ring-bound deck of cards somewhere along the tables, or can see one over somebody's shoulder if you would like to join in a participative nature. Okay, so leadership identity, and by that I mean sort of what kind of leader do you want to be known as? So if I were to walk into your teams, offices, people you work with and say, what's Dan like as a leader? I'm asking the others, not Dan. What sort of things would they say about him? What would they say about me? So not me as a person, holistically, I could be kind and nurturing and really creative, but actually, how am I showing up as a branded leader? Would they say, actually, she's fair, she's humble, those kind of things? So I want us to spend literally just 3 or 4 minutes thinking about, and if you turn over, you'll have a blank character card where you can put, I want people to describe my leadership identity as ... So for those of you that are happy and just have words you want, go ahead and scribble them down. Those of you that are thinking, oh, I don't know, there's some inspiration down the middle of this table. There's some character cards on the side there. So the sorts of things you might be thinking, are you a good listener? Are you fair? That's all right. Maybe you're robust. Maybe people, you want them to think, she's really resilient, actually. We've had so many setbacks as a team. But she's always like picking us up and we keep going, etc. So I give you a few minutes to think about that. Try and put 3 to 5 maybe. I say feel free to get up and take some inspiration. So it's how you want to be described. It's not necessarily how you are as at today. But if you had a magic wand that people would describe you as a leader. You look at I probably have. Yeah, I'll tell you what, have this one. Sorry.
Saw a leader that brings a camera.
Yeah, you're like, organised. I would like a well-resourced leader. Yeah. Depending on what you're like, you may rattle down more than 5, but then I'm going to challenge you now to start thinking about narrowing it down. So what would be probably the top 3 things, or in order, if you've got a little bit of a list you've curated. As if I did put them on the spot and ask, they would probably give me that just 2 or 3 words. They wouldn't go on ad infinitum. How are we doing? Do we think we've got some written down? Anybody want a bit more time? No. Great. So moving on to our next one then, I want to talk about core values. So we generally have core values as humans, even whether we like overtly talk about them to ourselves or not. But things that are your non-negotiables, the way you see the world, you were brought up to see the world or think about it, senses of right and wrong, your red lines of that's outrageous, or but I deserve this, or so really core values are things that matter to you. Often they're the things that help inform our purpose, what we get out of bed for, what we get super passionate about or volunteer our time for, or that if somebody impedes on them, we get a really strong response. We get really emotional about them as well. So core values. So I'd like you to have a think about 5 of them that really matter to you. Some of those things might well be things that are on character cards as well. There can be some overlap in there. So one of mine would be integrity. You know, I'd want people to say I was a really honest, open, like had integrity as a leader, but it's also one of my core values. So try and feel your values shield in with 5. And once you... No, it's all right, you're not the first one to ask. Let me just... I'll get you my Plan C pen. Yeah. Of course. All right.
Sorry, thank you.
Oh, it wasn't even for you. Oh, you're good. You're good. Nice. Okay, and if you have got 5 you're thinking about, you need to challenge yourselves now to really think, but which is the absolute core of those 5? Which one think, if push came to shove, I could let go of that one of being empathetic, but you cannot take integrity away from me. That would really bother me. That's so you might think back at times when you've either led people or worked with them, and it's usually you feel a strong, very visceral reaction. Either often being treated badly is what makes you realise what your core values are. But one in particular, if you had to be like, oh, that one, that's the biggest, strongest anchor in my values. So go and have a look around and see some of the other words, because on the spot it can be hard to think. And that's why I said it'd be nice as well, like next week, look back at them again. This is a sort of exercise as well. If you're not sure, you can ask some colleagues or family members subsequently and see how they would describe you as, because sometimes we don't realise how much something matters to us, but they see it in our behaviour or what we talk about or what we get riled up about all the time. Yeah, and there can be some overlap. It's okay. But I'd say there are ways that as a leader, I might want them to also know I'm firm, or like I'm resilient, I can hold my ground. But I wouldn't say it's one of my core values that I'm resilient. Do you know what I mean? It speaks more to passion and purpose and gets you out of bed, and sense of right and wrong is more, it can be more emotive, or, you know, the influences you've had growing up as well. Often we've had strong role models that have given, or defining moments we've seen in history as we've grown up that really seem to chime with what we feel the world should be like. Okay? Again, and if you haven't done this ever or in a while, I think you can actually spend quite a while looking at these. So that's why I wanted you to.
Say
yeah.
some of them sort of join up.
They
don't
do.
So you then think, like, you know, down whether you're professional, confidential, you know, show integrity.
Yes.
These things all seem a little bit like, I find it.
Yeah.
Put one word down, but
It's really forcing yourself to get succinct with it, because otherwise it's too much to hold all at once.
Yes.
If you're going to try and work on these and really consciously create that leadership brand, it's like, I want to be everything to everyone. I'm like, where do you start with that?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And that's what I say, it's great, ask a colleague, ask some people you work with, friend circles. If you're in a sports team or something, you can ask them for some of like, what would you describe me as right now? And see whether you like the answers you're getting, or if you, and so you can do it just as you, but for the purposes of today, I was looking at leadership in particular. So there's quite a lot there you can do, and the whole point of having the cards is you can go away and then revisit this in as much depth as you like. Hello, welcome. So moving that on a step further again then, we're going to look at signature behaviours. So what I mean by that is, what are the actions or habits that you would need to be acting out and demonstrating that would reflect the identity and values that you so far have written on your cards. So you've decided to yourself that they're important, they matter to you, they're how you want to be described as a leader. So what sort of things would you need to be saying and doing? What behaviours would they need to translate into for that to become a reality and not just nice words on a piece of paper? Yeah, so if we're going to move this into the practical now. So you have space on your next card, you can doodle that, write word clouds, full sentences, whatever is your cup of tea for working, things like that. I'd love you to try and come up with at least 3. So an example I had, if I think I want my team to describe me as a really accessible leader, you know, people say my door's always open, that kind of thing, or I want us to be transparent or open. I'm like, okay, but how would I actually do that and demonstrate it? It might be that I have a monthly one-to-one over coffee with every one of my department heads, or I take them out to play bingo on the last Friday of the month. It might be I just drop them an email to say, hope this week's gone well for you, give me your top 3 challenges, or if I had a magic wand, what would I get rid of? What one change would you have made this week, or things like that. So again, it'll be personal to each of you depending on what you've already started putting your ideas down on your cards. But the things that you want to be described as and that really matter to you, how could you start to demonstrate, act them, role model them, or just encourage it in people to demonstrate you really are that already? Does anybody else want another example of the sort of thing, or are you're comfortable? So some people say, I want people to say I'm firm but fair. That might actually be demonstrably when there's been behaviour in the office or language thrown around that you're one that will step up and go, okay, that's not in line with the language I want to hear in the workplace. Or somebody does a bit of banter in a conference or something, you think, that's a bit close to the line, or that made somebody else uncomfortable. Are you the leader that actually said, really, just banter? To get, just to highlight it. So there are lots of different ways we could do that to really live what we're wanting to be and demonstrate. Is it quiet and hot in here, or are we all thinking about... Okay, once we've got some signature behaviours, and this could become a very long list, and arguably it needs to be more than just 2 or 3 things, because it's not a tick box. I showed them I was friendly. Done. Yeah, you're going to, especially the ones that really matter to you, you're going to consistently want to be reiterating those so that it becomes part of culture and genuinely the brand of how you are. But if you have managed to write down 2 or 3 of these things you say you're going to do or that you want to be described as and known as, I want us to have a little think now about signal strength. And by that I mean, if I think I want to be considered to be really accessible or lots of integrity, I might say that because I'm going to have a weekly meeting, I'm going to tell my teams when things have gone wrong. I'm not going to hide my mistakes. I'm going to be really open and show humility for, yeah, that didn't go well. Or when we finished a project, one of my behaviours is I'm going to have a quick debrief with everybody and we lay out on the table without any blame, okay, yeah, I was too slow to send that finance information over. Well, yeah, you did, but do you know what? When I spoke to that client, I probably was a bit too short with them. I should have been giving them more. Oh, yeah, so maybe that's the way that I'm going to demonstrate that with my signals. So what I want you to think about is on the next card where you've got a kind of lighthouse beams coming out of it. You don't need to fill all 8 sections in that, but you might want to think about, don't trip myself. It's all right, it's better that it's that than me, because I'm recovering from a broken elbow, so that's fine, I don't mind laptops. What you could do for this, and again, the cards are all have a different approach depending. Some people are very visual, and when they're wanting to reflect on themselves, if you're a word person, that's fine, or do 1 to 10 if you're very numeric. But I might think if this is 0 down in my lighthouse and 10 up here is a really strong signal, I'm thinking, how strongly am I sending out a signal that I'm accessible or that I've got integrity? I might say, do you know what? I think I do that all right-ish, so I kind of do like 5. That signal beam from my lighthouse comes out about halfway. I'd love them to think I'm really firm and fair, but if I'm being honest with myself, I let a lot slide. I don't really pick it up, or I just wait till we have a midterm appraisal or an end-of-year review, or until a complaint comes in. So I'm not really doing much to demonstrate it. I believe in it, but I'm not doing much. It's only like a 2. I'm probably just down here about that. So you can start to fill in your grid. And again, it depends on the style of how you like to see things, but it can be a nice way, whether you like pretty colours and all the rest of it, or it just feels less intimidating to reflect on yourself, going, how much of that beam am I actually filling and really following through on what I want to be known as. And then you could also, repeat this in 6 months' time or in a year's time. You could choose to do this with teams and align it with your appraisal sequence. So if you want to ask them, there's a lot of talk about 180 and 360 reporting. You could say, describe me as a leader right now. Okay, give me 3 words, give me 5. Okay, that's interesting. And then say to yourself, yeah, do they think I'm very accessible, or I'm too firm, or whatever, and get them to fill in a version of this. And then you could go again at the end of a year, especially if you've done any development work or been working on culture, to see if it's shifted and all of those beam signals have got stronger. And then, so the key with this is to be honest with yourself as much as you can, because it's current snapshot. It's not aspirationally where you want it to be. But if you can't even colour it in or draw it out to yourself right now, then you're probably not going to follow through on trying to develop it. So, just let yourself scribble and be honest about that, and then you hopefully will start to see some movement once you've got it on there. The other thing I find with this sort of exercise, with it being very visual, is that when you see them against each other, you could do this just linear with bar chart kind of blocks if your brain prefers that you might surprise yourself when you're going to answer each one in isolation of how honest I am, how firm I am, how reliable I am, etc. But when you see them against each other, you might be surprised what it then suggests you need to work on most. Most people tend to focus on the thing they're already good at. So this can be a way to expose to you, maybe I do need to do more demonstrable things about discipline or firmness or whatever it is that you've already identified yourself you want to work on. And then that takes us into audience impact. So we've talked about how you want to be described as a leader. We've talked about values and what really matters to you, and how we might send some signals out and where we maybe need to make those signals a bit stronger. So the next thing is we're thinking about is who is seeing those. So if I carry on in my analogy with the lighthouse and these beams of leadership light are going out there and my brand and personality, who is seeing them and receiving that? So I would like you to think about who's in your teams perhaps. It might be up or down hierarchies. It could be peers. So it's obviously like internally. If you are in sports teams or other clubs and things, there's often leadership and core value type places there. But there's also external stakeholders to think about. So we would be amazed, actually, we think I'm leading these people that work for me, but they're not the only ones who see you as a leader. Lots of people actually observe how you are, or have a feel or an impression or a perception of what you are like as a leader, who will never work for you. But they could be clients, stakeholders, providers of services you want, people that you want to be invited to come to events at, etc., will all be forming opinions based on the signals you're sending out all the time. So it's, again, it will differ depending on the roles you're in, the size of teams you're in, where you want to be, but it's starting to think about who is actually taking in you as a leader at any given moment. Okay? The other thing that people often don't think about for this as well is their online presence. So this does touch a bit more into personal branding. So what are you communicating and how in an online space that might be informing people's opinions about your leadership brand? And then before we move to sort of things you might want to take forward, I'd love to hear from anybody what signal strengths or like behaviours you're already starting to think, I don't really do much of that. Anybody comfortable sharing some of the things we've already just reflected on in terms of how we'd like to be described as a leader?
I will.
Thank you.
I am not very decisive, but I wish I was.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, thank you. And did you have any thoughts about behaviours you would potentially work on to improve that one?
I think oftentimes, like in my role, there's quite a bit of like problem solving from
Okay.
the team members coming to me, and a lot of the time, rather than just sticking with my thought and decision, I'll open more of a conversation than it needs to be. So actually just standing firm on that decision in the first instance.
Okay. That's a really interesting insight, because quite often we have this idea of, I need to collaborate and I need to get lots of outside opinions. But there is something that sometimes it is, you just need to get on. You've got all the information you need and the moves, and you need to make that decision and move forward. So are there any particular ways that you might make your practice being more decisive?
So, like sometimes if one of the team comes to me with an issue, I'll then discuss it with my peers in the management team before going back to them.
Yeah.
Whereas actually I could have just made that decision in the first instance.
Yeah. Okay. So
Sort of independently.
yeah. So potentially you might want to explore on your signal the behaviours you're going to put out there of, I'm going to make myself just make some decisions, because we can change them. It's totally fine to change them. And there are times when you do ask and see, you can experiment with what happens if I am just more decisive with that and don't, like command by committee, I call that, where there's brings a lot of drag on business to go around and ask everybody. Yeah. Anybody else have any particular, either a value or identity that they're wanting to work on, but would like some thoughts on how they might turn that into a behaviour or an action? You're all good. Yeah. You're like, it's fine, I know how to be better. I just need to do it. Okay then. Right, so what I would like to move on to then is you thinking about, of those signals, strengths that you've already mapped out on your lighthouse or written down, if there's one there that's obviously lower to you or that matters a lot but seems to be quite low, which one you might commit to moving forward in this calendar year to actually boosting it. So again, this will be unique to you, because we can all go, I'm going to do more on communication or delegation. But actually, if you've already got a really strong area in that, that's not the one. You need to focus in on the thing that's going to really go back to card one of how to get the leadership brand that you want by the end of this year.